Hello and welcome everybody to Bleach Virgin Podcast. This is going to be covering episodes 21 through 41. It is going to be season 2. Technically this is our second episode and I am here with Cladtu. How are you doing, Clad?
Doing great, because I got to watch some more Bleach.
That's what I like to hear, dude. Let's go. So, here we are talking about these episodes and I would say the general plan of Ichigo at this point. I believe they went through the portal and they are finally in the Soul Society, and they are basically going through a bunch of different mishaps and steps here to try to save Rukia. And have a bit of a structure here. We're going to go through kind of each episode a little bit, and we can talk about what happens in those episodes. We'll start with episode 21. This is the episode where Ichigo basically goes up straight to the gates. He meets the big giant gatekeeper guy who uses axes, I guess, like two of them. He has one, uses two
Yeah, he
of
started
them,
off with one and swapped to two.
and he's just this absolute giant kind of a guy. And we see kind of a big power reveal. This is actually something that I think we noticed, that the the powers get revealed in a way that happened during the fights, which is a big thing with Bleach, I think. In other series, you might have a training arc, and maybe they'll have the powers kind of explained as that training happens. I think one of the big offenders of that is My Hero Academia. They go through a lot of training exercises, like a lot of different training exercises, and you see exactly what they are doing to power themselves up. But in this series, you don't really get that. You kind of get flashbacks that happen in the middle of the fights, or at least you do in this season specifically. And big one with that is we see a lot of flashbacks with Uruhara Kisuke, and we see what Uryu does with his little box and his glove. But I guess we'll talk specifically about Ichigo here in this incident. We get a good, nice reveal of like what a Zanpakuto looks like when it doesn't have all those bandages. How do you feel about that? How do you feel about his Zanpakuto and its look?
It was interesting, and honestly, I'm still a little confused with how the Zonpak toes work, because they never really gave a quite clear understanding. I think it's still a little murky with how they
Yeah.
went about it up until the end of the season when it started kind of making a little bit more sense.
Yeah, I could definitely see some confusion with it, especially when we get to Kenpachi. I think he added an extra element of confusion with what's going on with his situation too. And we'll definitely get into that. But you do get a little bit of glimpses of the Shikai. So you have like your Zanpakuto, and it always just looks like a random kind of boring sword, and that's how everybody has their Zanpakuto essentially. But
Hmm.
then as you go on with the series, you realize there's a form called a Shikai, and I believe it's first revealed with Renji, and he transforms his sword into another version of itself, or the true version of itself. And with it generally comes either a fun little new mechanic or maybe some sort of power that comes with it. So we see Ichigo's. He had the sword transformed into this crescent shape, kind of really big Final Fantasy 7 big sword, Monster Hunter big sword,
Hmm.
your Berserk giant sword kind of character. And to me, I found that interesting because I felt like the big sword trope is always so cool to me, especially since
Hmm.
I always played Monster Hunter and I was a great sword user. But then you also get to see a lot of other swords throughout this arc that are nothing like that. In fact, some of them get smaller and smaller. Um, I think one of the first characters we see with that is kind of a nobody. I guess we'll get into that later. Let's go ahead and keep with the structure before I get ahead of myself a little bit, because I can already see myself going through that. Actually, the first Zanpakuto that we kind of see here in this arc, we see the Gatekeeper, but we don't really know if those axes are Zanpakuto. He just kind of has axes. I guess we could assume that's the released form or a Shikai version of him. Um, but quickly we see he's a really big guy, and Ichigo easily overpowers this giant, right?
Yes.
Easily. And there wasn't really much to say about that giant, in my opinion. He just gets easily pushed back, and he was about to let Ichigo through the gate, but then we see a captain named Gin, and then we actually get a little bit of a reveal of his power. Do you remember what that was? What Gin did to Ichigo?
I actually don't remember because I think it happened so fast.
It was pretty
I
quick.
just
It
I
was.
just remember the gatekeeper getting smacked, basically.
Yeah.
And then Geen showed up. And then I really don't remember exactly what happened in regards
It was pretty
to that.
quick. What Ging did was, I think somebody made fun of his sword and said, "What are you gonna do?" Oh no, Ichigo made fun of Ging. He's like, "What are you gonna do with that little dagger?" Because remember, his sword in its
Right,
default
that's
state was
right.
actually really tiny. But then what he
Yeah.
does is his
I made
sword.
Ichigo's mistake and underestimated it and
Yeah,
just
you
didn't think about
underestimate
it.
it. He makes that extremely small sword basically push out, and the sword gets really, really long, and it just
I
extends.
remember that. Yeah, okay. Okay, yeah, it's
And
coming
like a
back to
blink
me.
of eye just goes like shoots forward basically,
Yeah.
and it just pushes Ichigo and the whole squad right away from the gate,
Hmm.
essentially. And that's kind of the introduction to one of the captains. He was extremely powerful, had no problem just pushing them away. And as we know, the captains are basically all. Do we know actually at this point that they are? Because we get introduced to Byakuya. Did they say Byakuya was a captain?
I think they introduced that
I think they
back in
did.
season 1 with Rinji,
I
did they
think
not?
I think they did. I could be wrong in this, but basically we get a little glimpse of this is what a captain is, right? We
Hmm.
know Byakuya is already really strong as a captain, but this is what a captain's
I think it was
power.
basically assumed because he was wearing the captain's jacket like everybody else.
Exactly. Yeah, everybody was wearing a captain's jacket. And we see more of that later, of course, because we also get an intro to all the 13 captains, what they look like, and all of them being kind of assembled together. But
Hmm.
before we get to that, we'll talk about an arc that not even arc, a couple of episodes that I found, me personally, a little bit boring. Which, of course, is Ganju, his whole introduction. Which I don't know if Bleach fans are a big fan of Ganju or not. Personally, I'm not a fan of Ganju. I think he's a bit annoying. And he gets
Yeah.
introduction and a bit of an introduction to his sister though. That I do like his sister. I think the
Yeah, his
sister's kind of
sister's
cool.
cool.
But Ganju essentially is introduced with like a little bit of a gang. He has like a boar that he rides or something. It's kind of a weird couple of episodes. I feel like it's mostly comedy. I don't remember much
It
actually
almost
happening
seems
in those
filler
episodes.
if it
It
didn't
kind of
lead into
does.
his sister.
Yeah, it almost seems like it would have been a filler episode. Just the way it's all handled, it wasn't very engaging to me. I wasn't like, oh man, I'm so excited to meet the Shiba clan. Like to me, that wasn't really. I wasn't really into it. But we get a little bit of a training arc, right? They get this
Hmm.
little orb they have to
The
train
spirit
with.
ball.
Yeah, and they kind of learn how to control their spirit energy a little bit. To me, if this was meant to be a training it feels it's a weird episode. It's definitely weird. It's like 2 or 3 episodes actually, and it all just seems like, is this supposed to be a training episode or like I'm not sure what they were trying to do with these episodes. They were awkward to me. I don't know how you felt about them, but to me, I was kind of zoning out actually while rewatching them.
Yeah, I kind of felt that way too. Like the
Hmm.
only real interesting thing was the just the actual training part with the ball, but was that even really training? Because he just picked it up pretty instantly.
It didn't
So it's
really
just like,
feel
hey,
like.
let's learn a new technique.
Yeah, you I think you remember
It's
you
not
learn
even
like a
quite a
couple of
technique.
things. Yeah, I don't know if it's training or technique. I'm not really sure what they were going for, but I guess we learn a little bit. Every single member of the squad or the gang or whatever you want to call them, they get a hold of the orb, and immediately they have kind of a different ways to deal with the spirit energy. I think Uryu gets it, and it's more like an egg instead of a circle. And then Orihime gets it, and she's just like a natural. And then you have Chad, and his is like super, super strong, but it's ridiculously unstable. And then Ichigo just can't do it. So I guess it's supposed to be like a little bit of an insight onto how they handle their powers or where their powers are at that
Yeah,
moment, I
that's
guess.
definitely what it seemed like the episode was kind of
That
about,
was
was
the
just
only
kind of
takeaway
gauging their powers of where they're at after the,
after the
I guess,
training they had.
mini time skip that they.
Yeah, I think the time skip was like 20 or I don't know. It could have been like 10 days, 20 days, or like a month. There was like that gap of like I'm not sure exact. I think they even
An
said how much it
undetermined
was.
amount of time.
It was definitely not more than a month, but I know they took like 10 days or something like that just to all train. So we kind of see a little bit of that Yeah, the whole few episodes was just like a comedy arc. Didn't really do much for me. I have to imagine the manga was probably wrapping it up a lot quicker than this. But there was one interesting thing that kind of happened in these episodes. We do get the introduction to all the 13 captains, and we kind of get to see what they all look like. Were there any that stood out to you when you get them all assembled?
With the I'm sorry, I don't know why I missed what you said. What'd you say?
I said between all those, I mean that basically sums up those that fucking orb
Yeah,
arc
that
really
that
in
I
general.
it
But
really, like I said, really the only thing I took away from that whole Shiba clan thing was the cannon, his sister, and the spirit ball.
yeah,
That's really all I was able to really take away from that.
it was kind
Everything
of
else in the
boring.
arc was actually so much more impactful that I almost completely forgot stuff that happened at the beginning
I think
of
it
this
actually
arc.
was like 4 episodes long too. It was like actually like 3 or 4 episodes long, and I don't think they needed to spend that long on it, sadly. But what I was gonna say is that they had the introduction to all 13 captains and what they looked like, kind of around that
Yeah.
same time at least. Were there any that stood out to you? You have your old Buckethead captain. Then of course you get introduced with Geen. You get introduced. I think one of them's a little boy.
Yeah.
You get the old man.
I When I saw them line up, I really didn't think anything about it because I think what drew my attention the most during that
Hmm.
was the guy with the pink jacket.
The pink
Because I was
jacket
just
guy.
going, why is he different? What is special about this guy? I think I completely forgot what they were even called to the meeting for. It was probably about Ryoka that they were like trying to talk about that or something.
Yes, they
But
were. I think they were
I think I
scared of
was
the Ryoka.
too captivated by why does this guy have a pink jacket? I don't know. I think
Yeah,
it to me it made him seem like he was way more important than he actually
I really
ended up
liked that.
being.
I think that I really think that the cap. This is something I forget what you call it, but I think the black robes, while they are kind of cool, to me they do get a little boring to look at. So I'm really happy that they all have like different and exciting outfits on some of the captains, because I think
Hmm.
that they. I don't know. I get that they're supposed to be like uniforms and stuff, but it gets kind of boring to look at that from like visually. I think it's so nice when they have tiny little bits of it's kind of like with Naruto too, right? Like if you were to compare Naruto, everybody has that green, what do you call it? The ninja
Yeah,
green
the
thing.
tuning, or
Like a
well, I guess it wasn't a
jacket,
tuning jacket,
vest.
was
It's
it?
a vest,
Yeah,
I
it was a
guess.
tuning jacket.
Yeah, it's like a little tuning
But yeah,
vest, green thing
yeah,
that they always wear with blue underneath. It's like I get it, it's the outfit and all, but it always just kind of gets boring if everybody wears that, you know?
yeah.
And that's kind of how I felt about the outfits here. I'm glad that some of them kind of actually stand out and they add some stuff and flair to it. Byakuya has a scarf and his stuff in his hair. You have the pink
Mhm.
outfit with the hat that he has on as well. I'm glad that there's a little bit of variety
Itachi's
there.
that's kind of torn up a little bit,
Yeah, yeah. They'll
battle
definitely need
worn.
that. Because if all the characters just had, I'm gonna follow the rules and just make everything
Yeah,
look the
I wish
same,
there
it'd
was
be
a
kind of
little
boring.
bit more variation to how they had it because, like I
Mhm.
said, like I just didn't think anything about it. It just made
Yeah.
me think because they were all so similar that the pink jacket guy was like extremely important.
Yeah. I think a good comparison of that is the Naruto outfits, because like Kakashi is a cool character and everything, right? But he
Yeah, you
has
don't
the
think much
exact
about
same
the
outfit.
vest.
Yeah, he just has the same outfit as everybody else. But then you get, of course, to characters down the road, and they finally start looking a little bit different. Not all the time though. I
Mhm.
think Yamato was one that looked the same like Kakashi too. The only thing different was just a different bit of a helmet type
I mean,
thing.
when you think of Kakashi, you think of his hair and his mask.
Hmm.
You
And
don't think at all about the vest.
I think that's what the main focus here was for Bleach. They were just trying to focus on the hair and what's around the
Hmm.
head more than the jackets themselves. But
Oh,
yep.
speaking of which, I did remember seeing that other guy at that time, but it didn't really think too much about it, like his weird sideways pointy hat. The
Oh
pale
yeah,
dude.
yeah,
I remember seeing
Mayuri,
that
I
also
believe
stood
is.
out when I saw that.
Yeah, he has definitely a different setup. I think you even said, is that his hair? The scientist guy. Yeah, with all white skin and black face, kind of
Caesar.
weird. Yeah. Very different, very, very different. I like him. There's actually a great moment with him later that I would like to talk about. But before we get to that, okay, so we get into the orb training. They get shot through that giant cannon. They
Mhm.
break inside. Pretty much all the first episodes are kind of like, okay, yeah, we kind of see what's happening, not too much speculation. But then we get introduced a bit to Kenpachi, and he wants to do nothing but just fight everybody. He just wants to fight. He's looking for the strongest one. I think there's a moment where they all split up, and
Yeah.
Kenpachi's like, all right, who's the strongest? I'm only going after him. He's
Yeah.
your battle hungry kind of guy, right? Which I do like Kenpachi. I think Kenpachi is one of the more fan favorite characters in Bleach
Oh
for
yeah,
that
he was really
reason.
cool.
Yeah, we watched it in the English, and I think his voice actor is fantastic. It's the same one as Jiraiya's, I
Hmm.
believe, which is kind
Very
of
good
cool.
voice actor.
I like the Japanese, but honestly, the Bleach English is just really good too. I actually really like the English. There's very few anime series that have really good English and very good like sub and dub, and this one has amazing both. Um, but oh yeah, something that else that happened at the meeting, we see Eisen and Gin. They have this weird little conflict at the meeting, and then we see the little boy character, Toshiro, and he's like overhearing their little conflict that's happening. So we see that there's a little bit of trouble in paradise.
Did that happen in the first meeting, or was
It
that at the
did.
second meeting?
That was the first meeting. That happened at the first meeting.
Okay, because I remember they had a conflict at the second meeting.
There was a second meeting. I think the second meeting you're thinking of it were all the lieutenants. Is that the one you're thinking of? Because there was also a meeting with lieutenants too, where they all
Well,
worked
I
on.
don't want to get too far ahead about talking about it, but
Yeah,
they were talking about Rukia's punishment, I believe.
yeah, something like
Maybe
that.
I don't remember exactly, but it ended up being Eisen and a few others were siding against Byakuya, maybe.
Byakuya was kind of. I don't know. I kind of want to say Byakuya a little bit for later because he was a big part of the ending part.
I
But
just
when
remember they had a vote about something specifically,
yeah,
and they ended up voting against some people. They're
they
like, "All
had a
right, we got to
vote.
get ready for something."
They had a vote for against Renji because remember Renji
Oh, that's
and
right. That's
Byakuya.
right. Yeah.
So, yeah, what ends up happening is Renji loses his fight with Ichigo, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And so Byakuya is like, put this fucking man in prison. How dare
Mm-hmm.
he lose? And all of the captains had a meeting where they voted against him being like
Yeah.
imprisoned and stuff. And I'm like, no, you're a good job. You just got your ass beat. It's
Yeah.
like it's like that Twitter meme where
At
it's
least
like I'm
let this
about
man go to the hospital.
yeah, they put him inside a bed, inside of like behind a bar cage and stuff. But it's like that meme on Twitter. It's like I'm about to fight this guy, show a video, and he's like, "Bro, I'm not showing that fight. I got my ass whooped." And like the next post or something.
Yeah.
That's how I imagine Rinji in that moment. It's like I'm about to kill Ichigo. Oh shit,
Yeah.
Ichigo
Delete the
fucked
VOD.
me up.
Delete the VOD.
Yeah, delete that VOD. But before we get into that, we get Ikaku's intro, which is pretty cool. I like Ikaku. He's
Mm-hmm.
the bald character.
It's really
He
cool.
he has a fight with Ichigo. We learn he is the third seat. So we already know about captains, and then we already know about lieutenants, who are basically the second seat. But now we know what basically the power or strength of a third seat is, because this is the third in power. And we learn Ikaku is pretty strong. He can handle
Mm-hmm.
himself. He releases his Shikai, which I don't know if you want to describe what it was. Do you remember?
It turned into the spear, did it not?
It
Because it
did.
was started out
It did.
as a sword, right?
It started out with the sword, and then he changed it into that cool ass spear, which I really like. I really like how it's not just limited to swords, because that's something that I think at this point we weren't really, or maybe you weren't really sure if they were all going to be swords, or maybe they could be different things. Because before that, what did we see? We saw Renji's,
Yeah, you can
and that
see
was it.
Renji's turn
Oh,
into
we see
which we or
Urahara's
not yet. We
Kisuke.
did. Well, Uzuhara, we don't really quite know what that is yet at this point in time, right?
He said it was his Zanpakuto. It was his
He did say it was
Zanpakuto.
a Zanpakuto?
He
Okay,
did.
yeah.
He said
It,
scream or something Benihime, and that was his.
oh, right, right.
Because he had a whole training thing with Ichigo, and he was like whooping his
I do
ass.
remember him calling it Benihime.
hmm And
Yeah,
so
so we
he
saw
and
that,
Renji's
and
were
that
the
was
only
still a
ones, I think.
sword.
And I don't think the gatekeeper was sword. It was just a giant axe, and I don't think there was any reveal of that being a Zanpakuto. It might have just been a fucking axe, honestly.
Probably could have seen it coming with Renji's because, like, is it really a sword when it stretches out
Yeah.
like that, or is it kind of just a bladed whip?
It's an
You know?
interesting thing. It reminds me a lot of Ivy from Soul
Oh
Calibur.
yeah, yeah. You know what though? It did like reconnect, so it was still a sword, kind of.
Yeah, it like split apart a bit, and it had
Yeah,
like I would imagine like metal fibers is kind of what it reminded me of.
yeah.
It was pretty cool. I like Renji's sword a lot, and we can get into that with this fight. But what I liked about Ikaku is that he was the third, and he had a lot of power to him, but also he had a lot of tactics. I don't know if you remember, he had
Mhm.
fucking like healing cream. He had
Was it healing cream? I thought it was more
something
like
like that.
Vaseline, like what MMA fighters, boxers do
It
when
might
they
have
get
been.
cuts. They
He
put
didn't say.
Vaseline on to stop the bleeding.
Yeah, I mean, he didn't say exactly what it was. He just said ointment, I think, is the
Yeah,
exact
he
term he
just said
used.
like
So
some ointment. Mm.
could be healing stuff. We don't really know. And then he just has that hidden there. Oh, you know what I also liked about him? When he was before he even released his Shikai, he was actually fighting with his scabbard. Do you remember that? He was actually just like dual wielding the sword
Oh
and
yeah,
that.
yeah.
And
That was pretty cool.
as you know, those are like actually just made out of like
Proof
wood
that
or
he
something like
is
that.
very tactical.
Yeah, he's a smart guy. I mean, the cream too. He was a
Hmm.
thinker. He was a battle guy, but he was using his brain. Like he wasn't just fighting people all willy nilly. He actually had a lot of creative stuff there, which I really liked about him. He also had his spear when he first used it. You also learn like it splits apart. So like when he goes for that attack against them, he's like, "Oh, you thought I was done," and then it like disassembles and then scratches him right in the face or
Hmm.
some shit. I really like that. Oh, and then he also had that moment where he tries to attack him in the chain, he catches it with the chain, but then reconnects the spear to like get his sword stuck in there. I thought that was also really cool. I actually thought this whole fight had like a lot of cool moments. It's a very different fight from a lot of the others because it seems like it feels like a sword fight versus like it feels like a down to earth grounded sword fight to me.
Hmm.
And I think that is something that doesn't happen too often in the rest of Bleach. It's
Yeah,
like the
it kind of
most
started seeming
grounded.
to get a bit more crazy
Yeah, and I think I
towards
could
the
say
end.
that. I think I can say that once we especially get to the big Kenpachi fight at the end.
Hmm.
Because this fight with Ikaku feels really grounded and kind of more based in, not, I wouldn't say fully based, but it feels more realistic with the
Yeah,
sword fight mechanics, I guess. But then it quickly turns into more anime, more powery. Um,
yeah,
but this one, it felt good. I liked this kind of fight. It was something that you only see in early Bleach, and for that, it was great. I guess a good comparison of that would be, I don't know. It's like if you were to watch like early Naruto, it's like somebody actually doing damage with a kunai, which would never happen later in the fucking
oh
series.
yeah. When they're using the kunai and the throwing stars and stuff, and you see
Yeah,
them fighting that way, and
yeah.
then you later on start getting into the crazy genjutsu stuff.
Yeah, and it's just like warping reality in
Yeah, and
space.
then you're just like, oh, what is exactly? I know what I see is happening, but what
These aren't even
exactly is
ninjas
happening?
anymore.
You
These are
know?
just wizards. Like
Yeah.
they're not even. This isn't a ninja fight. Like, but yeah, that's kind of what it felt like. This is what a sword fight felt like. Felt like it felt
Hmm.
like a sword fight. And I really had appreciation for that. Even though, of course, technically it wasn't a sword. It was like a spear thing. But I really like the Sakaku fight, and then you learn a lot about the characters, very honorable. And what I love about this is Ikaku learns a lot about Ichigo. He's the strongest in the group. You find out that he's what? He's his name, his description, which is important for later, as we'll find out,
Hmm.
because Ikaku ends up having this great moment. I loved it when I think
Yeah,
you were
I
even
loved it too.
saying it. He was on the he was
Like the
like
medical bed or
he was on
whatever.
a medical bed, right? And he was getting interviewed by the science guy, Mayuri, who was that
Hmm.
creepy guy with like the coke fingernail, that really one long fingernail, and he had this
Interviewed. I'd
weird
say
face.
more interrogated with how aggressive he
Yeah.
was being.
It was more of an interrogation. And he's basically Kaku's like, I don't know anything. Never saw him. I just lost that bad. I got my ass whooped so badly, I didn't even get to see what the guy looked like. Right?
Mm,
And then Kenpachi shows up, saves the day, grabs that little bitch's hand and say, "Oh, interesting. When did you get the power to be able to do this to punish my fucking subordinates? Interesting that you're
mm.
allowed to do this." And Mayuri just runs away, like a little bitch. I
I
loved it.
love
And then immediately you said, "Oh, I hope he tells Kenpachi everything," didn't you?
it.
And
I
lo and
did.
behold, what happened?
He gave him the deets on
He
everything,
told him everything he needed to know, told his captain everything. I loved that. I
which
loved
is
that part.
great because it's very insightful, not just to Ikaku and his own personal character, but about how Mayuri is. We haven't even
Yeah,
seen
he's
anything except a tiny little bit, but that is very insightful. Just seeing that moment right there with
hmm
him.
it shows how nice Kenpachi is to his subordinates, and you wouldn't think he would be.
Hmm.
Because Kenpachi seems like he would just be a big evil brute, but he actually kind of has a lot of bit of respect and compassion for his subordinates, which is something
And which
that
also
you
it
wouldn't expect.
shows the loyalty to their captains, not to the Soul Society itself.
Yeah, yeah,
Otherwise,
that's
why
true.
wouldn't have Ikaku just told the other captain everything as well?
Yeah, they're very. That's actually seen in I think in another moment with a character we end up finding Hanataro. Who's like that small little Squad 4
Oh
boy.
yeah,
Remember
yeah.
they like take him as
Hmm.
captive and all the Squad 11 is like, "So, we
Yeah.
don't care.
You think he's one of us?
He's not one of us. He's not Squad 11. We don't care."
Which I think it was good to have that as well, because when you just see the Ikaku thing, you're like, is it him like actually only being loyal to Zenpachi, or is it he just doesn't want Mayuri to battle him because he actually wants Kenpachi to, have his fun? But then you see the Hanataro thing, and you're like, oh, okay, there actually isn't that much loyalty between the squads themselves.
Yeah, which I think is kind of important. I think it's kind of a neat little detail because I think in other series where you have a large group of force, they all kind of work together, and I don't think it's that
Mhm.
realistic actually. If you look at like America, you always see these big rivalries and hatred towards like Navy, Marines, Army, Air Force. Like they all kind of have
Hell,
like,
I mean, you even have in-state school rivalries.
oh yeah, yeah, you can take it even broader. That's for sure. And I think that's more realistic because I don't think everybody has that big collective mindset. Um, I don't know. I don't know why, but I just feel like I can always compare Bleach to Naruto. Maybe these comparisons get a little boring, but I think it's because it's a show that came out. I mean, for me personally, I watched Naruto and Bleach when they both first came out.
Mhm.
I watched them side by side, and there are a lot of similarities to them. Um, one of which I'll also go into here, which is Ganju, because we get a fight with him and with the fifth seat, who is Yumichika, I believe is his name. I'm not a fan of Yumichika. I don't know how you felt about him. I found him to be kind of annoying.
I think he's designed to be a little annoying.
Yeah, he's
I
definitely
mean, he's
designed
he's a
that way.
narcissist, like.
But here's where this becomes a problem for me: is Ganju is also annoying, to me at least.
Yeah.
I find both of them annoying, and I couldn't help. I was like, who do I root for? Because like, on one hand, I could kind of be happy with this fight going either way. Um, One of the comparisons, of course, that I made with that I like to make it with Naruto, is I remember Ganju had his sand powers, which
Mm-hmm.
I swear happens like right around the time Gaara is like introduced. I don't know, maybe I'll look at that info up or not, but their sand powers are just, I don't know, it's just not as cool. It's just he makes a little circle and he can turn things into sand.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's kind of
It's
interesting,
interesting.
I guess. It really gave me big vibes with Usopp from One Piece because all he really did was run away. Like that's
Yeah.
all he did. He was just
I
running.
think the whole point of his Seppa powers is just for his ultimate tack, Pocket Sand.
Pocket sand, yep, just throw it right in their eyes.
That's
That's pretty
that's
much
all.
all he did.
That's it.
That's all he
Which I
did.
think it's perfect for him. Like, of course, he just throws sand in people's eyes and runs away.
He
It's a perfect
was
power for him.
he was just so weak. I mean, I don't know. It's I don't know. I like
It didn't really make sense that he joined him, honestly. You'd think that his
no.
sister would, based off how they introduced him.
I don't even. Why did he even join them? I actually can't even remember the reason why Ganju joined him. Because he hates Soul Reapers? Is that it? If he hates Soul Reapers,
Um,
he's still. It's like, how
because
are
we
you gonna
didn't
beat a Soul
hear
Reaper?
about his brother yet, so I
No,
don't
we
think that
did.
was his
He
reason.
said when they first met him, he was like, I'm like the world's most Soul Reaper hater, or like he's the biggest hater of Soul Reapers, because one killed my brother or something. I don't know. The whole thing with Ganju was just like his backstory wasn't good. His character design was kind of bleh. His powers were definitely pretty whack. He just was all around rather just bland and uninteresting to me. And I don't mean to do too much Ganju slander here, I guess, but he just somebody that runs away. When you look at Usopp in One Piece, it makes sense when he runs away and he's a coward. Just look at Usopp, right? But when you look at Ganju, he's kind of like this ripped dude. So like it's very conflicting to me. Like I feel like he shouldn't be running all the time. Maybe he should actually maybe Kubo should have made him actually be more of a fighter because it
Yeah,
just
he
wasn't good
definitely
to me.
still could have had like his typical pocket sand or the pepper spray bomb. He could have still used that and still
Hmm.
been like a very close quarters hand to hand combat kind of guy.
He
I
had
think it
that
would have been
giant
cool
knife that
if
was
he
kind of cool.
trained to counter weapons in battle. That would have been cool.
I
And it would have
think
made sense for his character as
I think a
well.
lot of things could have been cooler about him. I think the best way for him is if he was a keto user and he just used keto. That
Hmm.
is how I mean Seppa is I guess keto that we don't really understand because there isn't a number or an incantation like attached to it, but I imagine he should have been like a keto user. But it just felt awkward to me. He threw weird bombs and then his finishing attack was a firework, which was
It was
cool.
helpful to let other people know where they were, right?
I guess. Yeah.
Yeah, he kind of seems more like his whole character seems more like the point of transitioning into other exposition, you know?
I think there was one really good use of Ganju, and that was at the end of these episodes, if you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
That was the
And was
best
he even
part.
really that useful?
No, he wasn't useful, but like he was useful in letting the audience know just how powerful the enemies were in case we
Yeah.
forgot. I guess. In case we forgot.
I
Oh
looked it
yeah.
up. He did tell them about his brother before going with them, and that's why he
Yeah.
hated the Shinigamis. So,
Yeah.
okay.
Sure.
He's got
I
a
guess.
similar concept as Uryu going on, so now we have like two of those things going.
Yeah, but Uryu just comes off way cooler for sure. And I know Ganju was supposed to be kind of that runaway character. He definitely like Usopp vibes. But if that was the case, they shouldn't have made it. They should have made his character design, I think, reflect that, because he's just this big muscle guy, and it just maybe that's supposed to be like funny because you wouldn't expect him to run away, but it just makes him seem even more cowardly, in my opinion. I don't know. They could have done so much more with Ganju. I feel like Ganju is a big waste in this. I don't want to say
In this
series,
arc.
but this we'll say this arc. We'll say this arc. I don't know. Ganju, I don't think is anybody's favorite character. Put it
He
that
just
way.
seemed more like a plot device rather than an actual character.
Yeah, and he didn't really do that much for the plot. I think the only thing that he really did is, like I said before, at the end, which we'll get to.
He helped
But
split up the Soul Reapers earlier.
yeah,
Ikaku and Yumachika.
Yumi Chika, who wasn't really also, like I said before, he also was annoying. So you have
Yeah, that
like,
whole fight seemed like it was just comedy too.
yeah, there wasn't. It didn't feel like there were any stakes. That felt pretty pointless to
It
me.
just felt jokey, especially like
Hmm.
after the trash like pit part. Like I was like, oh.
Yeah, that trash pit
Whereas
part.
fucking Ichigo and Ikaku's fight, like that was intense, you know?
It
Like
was a
that
good
had
one.
some stakes
All of
on
the
the
fights are
line.
good. All of the fights are good. That fight was pretty trash. Um,
No pun intended.
Yeah, yeah, I did. True. And with that, I'm tired of talking about Ganju, to be honest.
There's not much
Uh,
left to talk about him.
yeah, not really. So now let's talk about Orihime and Uryu. We get a bit of a fight there where they fight this big, ugly dude named Jirobo, I guess.
Hmm.
So we learn a couple of things. We learn another Shikai reveal, and this time I kind of like what he did actually. He took his sword and put his hand all the way at the top, and then pushed it
Hmm.
down. And as he pushed it down, it created like a bunch
Turned
of
into a bunch of little
flying stuff.
flying shuriken
Yeah, I
things.
actually like that. I thought that was a cool
That,
reveal.
that was cool.
I don't like Jirubo, obviously. He looks stupid. He's a big ugly brute. He's designed to look
Yeah.
like a villain. He
Yeah.
is your villain, like you know he's gonna get his ass whooped kind of villain. Um
Yeah. You can tell he's not
He's not a big fighter,
important.
but not important, but you know he's about to get his ass whooped. And I
Hmm.
really like the Uryu here. Uryu has a lot of great
Oh
stuff
yeah.
here. I actually think Uryu in general, his I don't know how you feel about this, but I noticed it. Very different character and personality compared to season one, I think.
Oh, for sure.
I think he
Definitely.
has a
He
lot more
definitely seems like
comedy
he's
moments.
been developed a lot since then.
Yeah, he came off as a cocky little brat to me in season one, and in this season he comes off as just a really dependable and nice guy who has a little bit of comedy moments and maybe even a little bit of a thing with Orihime here. They have a little like I don't know what you want to call it. Is it flirty? They have a little bit of a flirty thing showing that they care for each other a little bit. They
I
got a
think
little
you could
bit
just
of
call it
blushing.
intimacy.
Yeah, a little intimate
Like
moment.
they have a little intimate moment there.
Yeah, it was definitely something. And they definitely put the blush cheeks on Orihime and a little bit on Uryu as well.
Definitely
Um,
talking about his development. You definitely see it even more so here because of Orihime being there, and maybe that's why they put them there together because Orihime hasn't really
mhm.
changed at all. You know, especially when she used her power and her little fairy guy was calling her out. So like, why are you hesitating? Like, why are you still saying the same? So you can kind of see the difference even more so there compared to Orihime, who hasn't really changed that much since then, compared to Uryu, how he is now.
Yeah, there's also a very big physical difference as we see with his new bow, which I thought was really cool. How
Yes,
did you like that?
that was really dope. I
I
really
like that.
enjoyed that.
Do you like it more than the blue light that just kind of was like appeared out of nowhere?
Ah, yes.
You like the
I can't
physical bow?
remember. Did his actual arrow still stay light, or did he have like?
Yes, yes, they
Okay,
were.
yeah,
The
yeah.
arrows were still
I'm
blue
glad they did
energy.
that. That was definitely a good choice. Having the
Hmm.
bow be like a physical manifestation that we can see, but still having the original essence of what the Quincy power is with the
Yeah,
blue light.
I really
I think that
like the
was
blue
definitely
light.
a very good
I
choice.
like the blue light mixed with the physical. Also, his
Hmm.
outfit is definitely a lot different. He has like a whole cape thing going on, or I don't know what you call it. It's like full white and blue. It looks pretty cool. I
It's
like
like
his
kind of
outfit.
like he has a tabard going on.
Yeah, it's very. I don't know. It's very. It reminds me like a Dungeons and Dragons cleric or something. I don't. I don't know why. Just like some. It reminds me of some like holy figure, but like ready to fucking fight
Mhm.
against some evil people. I don't know. Reminded me of D&D stuff a little bit. But yeah, I think we also get to see about Orihime, and we see what that she's hesitating. I think is the
Mhm.
word that was used, and so she sends out her shields just to attack, and it just doesn't work because she doesn't want to hurt the guy, even though this guy's trying to kill them.
Which I
Um,
think is important because we see something later on in the arc that actually I think kind of calls back to that because we see something similar happen with Ichigo and his Zanpakuto.
that's true. We do see a whole thing about resolve, I believe
Hmm.
was the key word there. But there was one really cool moment I liked about it, and that's of course where he's like, "I am the greatest ranged user of all time," and then Uryu just snipes and kills all of his little flying things out of there. To me, that was
Hmm.
great. I loved that.
Just
Um,
cut his monologue short.
yep, right in the middle of it, just fucks that guy up. Um, and then he also like shoots him in the wrist, I think, when he tries to like go for something when he doesn't have his
Hmm.
Zanpakuto out. I loved it. Uryu definitely seen as a really strong character. Um, and so I think that's about it for that fight. Next fight we have, of course, is Rinji versus Ichigo. How'd you feel about that fight?
I loved it. I very much enjoyed that rematch. I'm glad they didn't just go the route of all right, round two, get absolutely destroyed. It still had
Yeah.
well, you're not quite there yet, and the reveal of oh, now I actually have my full power. I'm unrestricted now.
Yeah, they
So
did
you
have that
go.
moment.
I like how they maintain the sense of mystery with the powers rather than just going, oh, well, what's his power level? Oh, it's 100,000, 9,000, like stuff like that. It's well that those scenes are cool in Dragon Ball, and being able to understand actual power scaling is cool and all. I like the sense of, well, we're kind of just feeling it out, and that was interesting
I think
because
that
we
was a
don't
great.
know how different Renji is now from how he was before.
We definitely don't get to see. Well, actually, we see a little bit of a flashback with Renji, but it doesn't evolve anything about his powers. So we're not
Mhm.
entirely sure about how strong or weak he is. We see him like grow up with Rukia, and we see a bit of like his background of how both of them were extremely poor. And they had a really tough time, even though in their world they don't even need to eat, but yet they feel hunger occasionally or something. There's a lot of weird stuff going on with that actually. Um, I think that was kind of something that we didn't get to explore much of the actual Soul Society world itself, which would have been cool. I actually would have appreciated if we could see more of that. But we do get a bit of reveal at the beginning of the fight, like you're saying. Renji is revealed to have um, 5 times stronger. Like their powers are restricted when they're in the human world. Actually, is what it was. So he's like 5 times stronger now than when he fought with Ichigo, which I thought was a great way of looking at it. Um,
Now,
yeah, yeah.
I don't remember. Did they state at this time that it was wartime usage yet? Because he
Ooh,
might
yeah.
still have restricted powers at this point in time.
I believe that they did have. I believe. Okay, so the wartime thing was basically saying you are allowed to use your Zanpakuto to full power or whatever, is what they said. I don't. I think you might be right that they didn't allow the usage of it until a certain point. It might have been after that
But
fight.
now that I'm thinking about it, maybe that's why he left his badge and stuff because he's like, I'm gonna fight this guy unrestricted. I don't care.
Yeah,
I'm
maybe. I
gonna
think
break
you're
the
right.
rules for this.
I don't think they. I don't think the power. I think the wartime was not used yet. I don't believe so. I believe it was used later on for something that we'll get into. I think it was used for that
I think
moment.
that's probably why he took his badge off. I'm
Yeah,
gonna fight unrestricted.
he
I'm
just
gonna give
really
it all I
wanted.
got to put Ichigo in his place for
Yeah,
Rukia.
he wanted to give it all because in his eyes he believed that he was the reason why she was getting executed. But then of course he
Hmm.
does kind of like a little bit of a revelation as the fight goes on and realizes that that's not what it was. One of the big moments for this fight for me, I did like a lot of how there was some tactics in this one as well. Ichigo had a bit of a training scene with Uruhara, and Uruhara is telling him like the more powerful an attack is, the more limits there are. And he used a great comparison. He was like, a revolver only shoots 6 times, but a missile shoots once. Like the
Hmm.
stronger their attack, the more limits there are. And so he like figured out Renji can only use his ranged attack like 3 times. And then that's when he had to like have his sword go back or some shit like that, right? And then he
Hmm.
goes and does it, but then still gets sliced anyways, which I thought was cool. I liked that whole
Yeah.
moment. I liked the training, and then what it came down to was Ichigo just wasn't quick enough, which I really liked about
I
that.
like it because the way that they're setting these fights up and stuff, you don't really just see easy free plot armor for Ichigo. Like, obviously, he has
Yeah,
plot armor. He's the
main
main
character.
character,
Yeah, main
but he's
character
just not
status.
having free fights.
Yeah, I like there was tactics in this one. Something that brought me back to the fight scene with Ikaku a little bit. Right, that's what it reminded
Hmm.
me of. And I wish there was a lot of more like those kind of tactics. I kind of really like that stuff. A little bit of brain power in there. And then we have, of course, after he defeats Renji, he finally has resolve on he wants to kill people. He's not afraid to like show that his weapon's gonna attack without any problems or anything like that. We get the
Hmm.
flashback. We learn Rukia gets approached by Byakuya and his noble family. Blah blah blah. But one of the cooler moments I liked at the end of that fight, we see that the hollow mask that Ichigo
Mm.
has is inside his his Soul Reaper outfit, and we learned that that's one of the reasons the attacks wasn't fatal on him. How'd you feel about that?
That was interesting because I've obviously seen clips and pictures and stuff of people
Hmm.
with the mask, and we've already seen Ichigo with a mask on his face at one point. But it's interesting that it popped up on his shoulder because that's obviously where he was struck.
Well, we
And
get
again, it
yeah,
happened the same place,
and we
which
also know that that mask was not on him. He's like, I threw that away.
yeah, yeah. So
Yeah.
it's definitely like spawning on him, and it's not explicitly on his face. So still trying to figure out what how that's working out, but
It's
you know, I
all
still
very
got some theories.
ominous. It's all very
Yeah.
ominous, isn't it? I do like that. But then, of course, we see a little bit. We didn't really talk much about Hanataro, but he heals Ichigo. I
Hmm.
imagine Hanataro to me feels just. I feel about Hanataro kind of the same way I feel about Ganju. He's there.
I like Hanataro more.
Yeah, yeah. No, I
He's
definitely could see
he's
that.
definitely more useful.
In a weird way, yeah, he kind of is, isn't he? He heals, and I
And
even
his
think he's
story makes
funnier.
sense of why he's with them too. Like he was,
He,
he
yeah,
just
no, you're right.
he was obviously just a what's the word I'm looking for? I don't want to say slave.
It's
I
just
don't want to
like,
say cuck either. He's is
it's
just the one
just,
that's made to do all the chores, and
yeah.
he
I mean, that's how
connected with Rukia. It made sense that he like got kidnapped. It made sense of how he worked into the
he's
story.
getting
Whereas
bullied.
Ganju could have just been, he could have kept his hatred. He could have just stuck
Hmm.
back at the Shiba clan. There was no real reason for him to join the group.
Yeah, he was just getting bullied, I guess is how
Hmm.
I'd like to put it. I mean, I think we learned a little bit about what is it, Squad 4. The whole Squad
Yeah.
4 is essentially like that. They're just getting bullied.
They're
They're like
just
the weakest.
yeah.
They're the healers. They're, just there to heal and clean, and nobody really respects them. So I actually you feel sympathy for the character of Hanataro a bit. You feel sorry for him. And you got a lot. I think honestly, he has some comedy moments that are pretty funny too. He has like that energy pill moment that I actually found kind of funny.
Yeah, that
Um,
was pretty funny.
I like that. Ganju doesn't really provide all of Ganju's comedy moments. Don't land for me. I know they've tried so many times and they just never land. I think a lot of the comedy is for him is like, oh, look at this extremely muscle guy, but he's actually just running away all the time. That's funny, isn't
I
it?
I, I think
Like,
I give at most for Ganju, I give a chuckle and a face palm.
facepalm is a good way to put it. It's like,
You're
I don't
like,
know. That's how I feel
what
about
was
Ganju.
that?
Mm-hmm. So, anyways, we move on from that. Let's talk about Momo finding Aizen's dead body. Nobody knows who
Mm.
killed him. There's a note left behind. Tell me all about what you know about Eisen, because the series has been out for a long time now, and I'm sure you've heard that name before.
All I know about Eisen is he clearly butts heads with Geen.
Hmm.
Um, he seems like one of the nicer Soul Reapers, so I would definitely put him
Yeah.
on the good side of things if you were to split up the Soul Society in terms of corruption and good-hearted people. I'd put him on the side of good-hearted people.
Did,
We didn't see what was in the note, I don't think. I don't think that was revealed yet. I think it was just revealed
um,
that he trusted his lieutenant a lot.
the note
Wait.
supposedly said who, if the note was something along the lines of like, this is who I think killed me if I showed up dead, is what the note said. And then she had that freak out moment. We had a bit of a cool
Yeah.
little fight. I actually like that fight where Momo and Gein's lieutenant,
Mhm.
the blonde hair emo kid,
Which is
kind of just goes at it.
more evidence of the loyalty to individual squads than to the other
Oh,
members of different
absolutely,
squads, because
absolutely.
they had like a whole they like developed Momo and forget what that other guy's name was. They developed
Yeah,
that the fact that they had like a
I
relationship
want to
to
say
some
his name was
degree.
Kira, or at least was something with a Ki. But yeah,
Yeah, that's what I was thinking, but I don't
I
quite
can't
remember his name.
remember
But
his name
that's
either.
but then he was just like, "Hey, if you're gonna attack my captain, I will kill you. Like
Yeah,
I don't care." So
yeah.
that was another example of the loyalty to squads. which is just further solidifying my belief that there's going to be something along the lines of corruption within the Soul Society, and there's kind of like a these guys versus these guys kind of thing that might be
Yeah,
happening.
there's definitely trouble in paradise. There's a lot of political stuff here, which you wouldn't really
Hmm.
guess from looking at 13 squads like that. Maybe I thought
Which
you
we
had
saw
the.
with the poverty thing too
Oh
in
yeah,
the flashback with Rinji and Rukia.
yeah. There's definitely something going on with like the noble families and like just
Hmm.
how the whole system works. They don't need food, they don't need to eat, but yet things are still kind of shitty. Um,
Hmm.
but I will say that the whole thing that I don't know, I thought they would be just like one big unit, all just because like to me watching this back is like if these guys weren't all kind of doing their weird behind the scenes against each other stuff, they could all easily just like attack them together at once. Like if they were organized and they were all working together, unlike what we've seen with how they're only loyal to their own squads. Can
Yeah,
you imagine? They would all just be like, all right, here's 13 squads. We're going against Ichigo, and he's dead. Like, oh,
yeah,
here's 13 people just as strong as, like, Kenpachi, all against one of you. Okay, Chad's dead. Like,
yeah. But they
there's,
just don't want to work together.
they don't want to work together. And I think that's a
Even
big
with the
thing.
case of like looking back with Ikaku, he's clearly a good guy, but
Yeah,
he
he's a good guy.
obviously wanted no help from Mayuri
Yeah, he
because he
didn't
doesn't
want to
like
give him
him.
anything.
Yeah, and he clearly wanted Zenpachi to fight Ichigo because he knew he was a strong opponent. So even stuff like that, it may
He
not
was
even
loyal
be
to him.
malintent. Yeah, it's
Hmm.
just pure loyalty to their captain individually.
Yeah, I think we definitely are probably going to see more of that. I can't remember. I'm sure there's a
It
lot of
definitely seems
but
like a very important and common trend
yeah,
going with that.
loyalty. Loyalty seems to be a very big kind of like theme or thematic here. So another thing that happens after that, we get Chad, who personally, again, I find to be amazing. And it makes me really sad to see him lose this fight. He fights the guy with the pink kimono. And one kind of interesting thing that I liked about him, I don't know if you noticed, did you notice he actually was dual wielding swords as opposed to one? Did you notice that?
I did not. I was too focused on Chad's ability and the fact that he also had what looked like it was a different style of like flame or thing going, but it was a similar
Yeah,
color
like big blue
to
fire was surrounding him.
Uryu's bows, or his arrows, like they have
Yeah.
that blue spirit type thing going. So
I
that might
really
be
liked
it might
Chad
be a
here
similar
though.
thing they're going with that.
Yeah, Chad was I just loved it though because Chad was just beating the
Sorry, I
fuck
can't
out
give
of
you 5
everybody.
minutes. This will only be in two.
There's like a lot of great moments with Chad this arc. I'm really sad he got beaten here because he needed to go up against a couple of people that were just weaker, like lieutenants or something. I think that would have been way better for Chad. Um, him versus a lieutenant would have been a great fight. He did
Mhm.
go up against like I think a third seat and then
Yeah,
just
you know
completely one
what?
shot him though.
Get rid of Ganju and have Chad group up with Ichigo.
Oh,
There
that
you
would have been
go.
such a cool pairing. I think Chad in an Ichigo pairing would be so much. Oh man, it's way better. That'd been way cooler. We see a whole flashback with Ichigo and Chad, and it's really cool. I like it. Like Chad's in trouble, and Ichigo comes, and then you see all these people, and he like fucking calls 911, and he's like, "Oh yeah, I'm gonna need an ambulance for one, two, three, four, five, six of them. Yeah, six ambulances." And then he just proceeds to like kick all of their asses. I love that flashback. It was pretty great. Um, I personally loved it, and I think Chad and Ichigo are a fantastic pair. And I think that I don't know. To me, I think I would love to see more of that, and I would like to see more of Chad. And I wish that Chad fought a bit of a weaker opponent. I don't think Chad's weak
Yeah,
by
at
any
least
means,
one.
but
At least let him see a lieutenant battle, and then see him
yeah,
go fight the captain.
he fought a third seat, which is okay, right? He fought someone that was
Mhm.
supposed to be on the same power level as Ikaku, but it was really like when you look at him, that guy was weak as shit. Like that was
Yeah,
Ikaku definitely would have beaten that guy. You know what I mean?
yeah.
So I felt a little bit bad about that because I was like, man, I feel like Chad needed to have two fights because sure I get it. Chad's not going to beat a captain. I think it's kind of hard to expect everybody to have the
He's
same
just too
power to
much of
beat a
a
captain.
Chad. They just had to send him
Yeah,
straight to a captain.
yeah, they really did. I actually wonder how that fight would have gone if Chad just decided to talk with him. Because I don't know about you, but I think that captain personally seemed like maybe he would have even understood or um, related to or had sympathy for Chad in his situation and maybe even helped him. I don't know.
Chad's not very the
He's not a talker
talkative
though.
type.
Yeah, and that's unfortunate. I think things would have gone really differently if Chad wasn't alone. But there were a lot of great funny moments with Chad where like he was alone, and I remember Ichigo and Ganju were like running away, and
Hmm.
and like there was like, oh my god, this scary explosion and stuff. I got to get away from it. And then as they run away, they realize it's just Chad punching through fucking
Yeah,
walls.
that was funny. It was like, oh,
Oh.
cut the numbers in half. Let's go.
I loved it. Chad in this arc was amazing, and he had a lot of cool moments where he's like bending people's Zombok toes with his fucking bare hands and shit.
Yeah, that was really sick.
Oh, and then he had that one moment where he's just like standing up top and is like you're talking about that blue glowy fire just emanating from him.
Hmm.
Oh, so cool. I love Chad. He also had some serious Yu Yu Hakusho vibes where he's like, I can only throw this punch 2 more times before I'm spent or something like that.
Yeah.
Um, which is a shame. I love Chad. I wish there was a lot more Chad, and I think in this season, Chad should have just fought against a different like a different third seat, because that third seat was basically a gag character. I would have even taken a third seat that was like more like the guy that we saw against Uryu and Orihime, somebody like him. That
Yeah.
like he was a pushover, but he was trying to be serious. The other guy wasn't being serious at all. He was just a pushover. And I think that was
Yeah.
the difference. At least let him have a cool moment just fucking one-shotting somebody who was really cocky or something, you know? That would have been
Yeah. I'm
great.
sure Chad will get a really good moment sometime soon.
So Ichigo versus Kenpachi is the fight that we get next, and
Mhm.
we love this fight personally. I love this fight. I don't know how you feel about fucking this fight was a great way to end the season.
That
Fantastic way to end the
was
season.
amazing. That's
Yeah,
all I got
I
to say
loved it.
about that. That
I
was
loved it.
amazing.
I love the blood. I thought there was a lot. I don't even remember this much blood in this one. Oh, you catch a dog.
Yep.
But the blood in this fight I thought was crazy near the end, where they were just going at it. Kenpachi was taking hit after hit after hit, and I think that's the whole point of the Kenpachi title, is that it's given to someone who doesn't care about getting hurt, which I
Yeah.
thought was really
I
cool.
mean, he wants to die in battle. Clearly. Clearly.
Like Whitebeard, I guess, which I thought was really cool. So okay, so let's go through this in steps. Ichigo goes against Kenpachi. The first thing we see
Hmm.
Kenpachi is like, take one hit on me for free. You got it, baby.
Hmm.
One hit. And what happens?
Nothing. He
Nothing.
swings and nothing.
Nothing. He doesn't even hurt him, and instead he hurts himself. Like his hands start bleeding and shit.
Hmm.
So we get a lot of moments of like him running away and he's scared, and then I think another really cool moment is like Ichigo puts his sword up to like defend himself, and Kapachi just slowly pierces right through it
Yeah.
and just stabs him in the fucking chest.
With
Oh, it's
that
great.
broken, serrated blade, so you know that's just tearing
Yeah.
up his insides.
What do you think's going on with that? What's going on with his Zanpakuto? Did they say what was going on with Kenpachi's Zanpakuto?
He can't speak to it, so it's the basic form of it. That's what he said. So I assume since it is the basic form, it's just war torn. It's just been broken down after using it just
Mm.
with such force over his thousands of battles.
Yeah, because we see he basically just fights without any powers, right? He's
Because I
just
think when
muscle.
we see him in his flashback, it's not nearly as torn up as it was.
Oh, that's a good question. I actually am not sure about that. I would have to re-examine that. That could be possible. I do remember we saw a little bit of the flashback, but I wasn't focusing on that aspect. That's interesting you brought that up, actually. I'm not
Unplugged my
entirely sure.
headphones.
But with Ichigo versus Kapachi, he gets stabbed, his Zanpakuto gets broken, and then we get another
Hmm.
like inner fight where we get introduced to, I don't know what you want to call them, negative, evil. It's
It's
basically
called
negative.
Hollow Ichigo. He
Was
said
it?
that was his hollow form. Yeah.
Mm.
Zangetsu said because we saw him fall once he went into his world, and we saw him fall, and he was like, "Oh no, we're sideways world." And Zangetsu was like, "You don't have to worry. Like you're good now." He was like, "That was your hollow form that was falling," and then that's who he ended up fighting.
I think that fight, one of my favorite moments for me, was the way he spun the sword with the bandages. I thought that was
Oh
really
yeah.
cool. I loved that.
That's definitely opening up a lot of possibilities because you even see Ichigo acknowledge that. I didn't even know that could be used
Yeah.
that way.
Yeah.
So that's just saying like, okay, so we're going to see new forms, but that doesn't even necessarily mean that what we see is what we're gonna get, you know?
It gave me real Ikaku vibes because Ikaku was pretty crazy with how he used his sword and just
Hmm.
or spear rather in a bunch of different ways. And it's like, oh, this might look like just a big hunk like of metal, like a big hunk of metal, but you can actually use it in some creative different ways here. And that was him
Hmm.
showing it off, and he was using it like a ranged weapon. And actually, the shape of Ichigo's sword makes a lot of sense because he was just like a saw blade because it's just big one like crescent kind of shape, right? So it worked really
Yeah.
well in that kind of spinning method. Um, but I loved it. I thought that fight was great. Eventually, he finds his Zanpakuto and he learns to do the opposite of what Kenpachi does, which is to work
Mhm.
with the sword rather than overpower. Just instead of focusing on like your own power, right?
Hmm.
It's just we're gonna work together. It's more
Yeah.
powerful, you know.
Just because you can rely on your own strength doesn't mean that you have to.
Yeah. And then, of course, one of the cooler reveals, and I don't think you saw this coming with his eye patch. Did you see that coming?
I did not see that explicitly coming. I thought when he was talking about this is my base form Zanpakuto,
Hmm.
I thought that's what he was restricting himself from, and then he was going to bring it out. But I like
Oh,
the route that they did go with it's his eye patch was restricting his power, but it's still he just relies on his own strength rather than sword. That was definitely a better way of going about it.
yeah, that thing was creepy as shit too. If you remember, it had
Mhm.
like
Oh,
a
yeah, when
bunch
he
of
pulled it off and it had a bunch of, like,
like
that hurts my
mouths on it
eyes
and
just
stuff.
thinking about yeah, just chewing away on his eyeball.
Just chewing away at his spirit energy, I guess. Doesn't seem like it would be
Mhm.
very comfortable. But the reason,
Then again,
um,
he was very much happy with getting sliced up.
oh yeah, I loved that part. He was just slicing away at him, and he just kept
Mhm.
going. And I think that's what's great about Kenpachi. He's a very different kind of character. He doesn't give a shit about like powers or anything like that. He just
Yeah.
comes at you, dude.
It's different from how you imagine a Soul Reaper would work with their, "Oh, well, I'm
Dude.
gonna use some keto," or, "I'm gonna use, some special weapon to do this," and, Kenpachi's just like, "Slice me up all you want, I'm coming at you
Yeah, dude.
hard."
He's like literally just a barbarian, just
Mhm.
full rage mode barbarian coming at you, tons of health, doesn't give a shit about the damage you deal to him, and is gonna try to cut you up no matter how much you cut him up. Just berserker mode. I loved it. I love Kenpachi,
Mhm.
and I love his lieutenant. His we didn't really talk about her. She's like the complete opposite of him,
Oh,
which
yeah,
is
we saw a
which is
glimpse
pretty
of,
fun.
her power too.
Yeah, we see like what did you see?
What I saw
Mhm.
was it didn't you didn't see quite like an outline, but you could definitely see a face of something, and it looked like how I imagine they would draw like a snake. So it looked
Uh,
like a pink hue, kind of snake-ish kind of power, like freak that dude out.
to me, it looked like like a cat.
It had fangs. It had
Mm.
fangs and evil eyes. That's what I saw. You know.
We could probably figure out get a little like a picture to I don't think there would be anything too wrong of it to try to look at whatever her little thing or outburst, I guess we'll call it, looked
Hmm.
like. But I really liked her personality. It's a great little relationship that they had because I think it shows also that Kenpachi is probably not an evil dude, even though he loves battle so
Yeah.
much. And he seems like a
It.
crazy sicko, but outside of combat, I think he's a pretty nice guy. He cares about all of his subordinates, and he doesn't
Mhm.
seem like he's a crazy person all of the time. At least that's
Mhm.
what I figured from him.
It's all about battle.
Yeah, he loves battle, but whenever he's not battling, he doesn't seem to be like an evil dick or anything like Mayuri is, right? The evil white
Yeah.
guy with all the
Yeah.
weird shit going on over there. But yeah,
Something I noticed about the lieutenant, or what I'm kind of guessing, because of what we saw before we see that specific scene, is she kicks Ichigo in the shoulder, and he's like, "Oh, I didn't even notice you were there."
that's true.
So
That is
I'm
true.
thinking with her, she just has immense like soul energy power going on. She's able to
Hmm.
control it so well. Like she has so much, and she can completely suppress it. Because I remember heard early on, like in season one, that you can suppress your soul energy where people can't see it or people can't feel
Hmm.
it out. because I think it was Uryu that actually mentioned it because they were talking about soul ribbons or something.
Yeah, and
And
he
he's
couldn't
like,
find
you,
it.
you can't even hide your soul ribbon, or you can't even see it, and stuff like that. So I'm thinking she just that's what, because that's what their squad is all about, is overwhelming power. Hers is clearly not physical. I'm thinking it's spiritual power.
Spiritual power. What about speed? Maybe she's just really quick or something. Think maybe that could be it.
That could be true. She could have some sort of
Like
agility,
nimble.
but
Think it's gonna be
I
spirit
think
power.
I think it was important that she wanted to like show off her spirit kind of power to
I mean,
that
that would
one
make
guy.
sense, right? Kenpachi's spirit power was fucking immense, and that's the reason why he had that eye patch, right?
Mm-hmm.
To make sure that it just wouldn't overflow. Because already with the eye patch, his spirit power was, or spirit pressure was so high, it was causing
Yeah,
Ichigo to freak out, and nothing could hurt him, not even a
it's
sword.
causing everybody else to basically
Yeah,
faint too.
it's like a big armor around him almost too. I guess
Mm-hmm.
kind of like armament hockey.
That
I guess.
that was really cool. How he was just sitting up there, and his presence alone was just able to fucking freak people out.
If you remember, you were like, well, if I was gonna stab him, if I had my free attack, I would just stab him in the eyes. Do you think that would
Yeah.
work, even with all that spirit pressure? Do you think his eyes would just take like no damage?
Well, if you remember what I said before, is if you got the option to get a free attack, you attack the little girl.
Oh yeah, that's right. You did say that. You wanted to attack
Because
her.
if he's giving you a free attack, you're not going to do anything to him. You might as well hit him somewhere where it hurts, you know?
Yeah, let's make Kenpachi angrier. That's gonna help.
As if
So,
running away did anything.
I mean, I guess maybe you would do damage to something. I don't know. You
I
can
mean, if
maybe.
anything, you could freak him out and he goes, "Oh, what are you doing?" And he tries to hold her body.
I
In the moment, it'd be hard for me personally to attack a child, obviously.
Yeah.
I'm just saying though, like watching that, like
Well, hey,
just I was trying to point out, like he's giving you a free attack, you're not doing anything to him.
I mean, you never know. She might not be a child because some of these people could be hundreds of years old or some shit.
That's true. He did
So
say, "What are you?" too.
yeah, who
Ichigo did say
knows?
that to her,
Who knows what
which is
considering the
interesting
souls
because
Soul Reaper Society.
does that mean he knows that she's not
Maybe
like a
she's maybe
normal
she's
being?
maybe she's something in hollow. I don't know. Maybe there's a little bit of hollow stuff going on there. Maybe.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we do know that hollows exist. Let's not. I mean, I know that's one of the things about this arc, right? Where it's like we kind of forget that hollows are a thing because that was so dominant in season one. But here we are in the Soul Society, where it's like, oh
Yeah.
yeah, hollows aren't gonna be here, right?
Yeah.
Obviously, but that is something that it exists in this world, I suppose, right? So don't forget hollows are a thing. So maybe there's something going on there. I don't know. Just a thought because that is something about Bleach where season 1 is just so different from this season because it's like here we are in human world, hollows are a problem. Here we are in Soul Society, hollows are nowhere to be seen here. You know what I
We
mean?
did see the flashback, but that doesn't mean explicitly that they were normal souls, you know? Like she did say like the clan she came from was like a bloodthirsty kind of evil clan. They would have stomped on her the first chance they got. So maybe they were hollows and like they just didn't want to show that in the flashback itself.
We
I could
also
see something like
we
that.
know there's a lot of different varieties of powers and humans out there, as we can see. Like we have the Quincy's, and we have Orihime, and we have Chad. There's definitely some different varieties of stuff going on. Um, so yeah, there's a lot of stuff in this world. Actually, I kind of like the Bleach universe a lot, although it is pretty hard later to figure out everything. I would say it's a pretty complex one, and it makes sense that why there's books on Bleach, like canon books that I think honestly I need to get around to reading at some point. It probably would be helpful because lore wise, it's a pretty big universe. But after the
Yeah.
Kenpachi fight, I guess we really just got like the very last bit that we'll close up on here, which is of course we get Yoririchi who reveals herself. What do you think about that reveal? Did you see that coming?
Um After I saw it happen, I was like, "Oh, yeah, I've definitely seen that character before
Ah,
with that name."
yeah,
Never made the connection. Never made
yeah.
the connection.
That is one of the things. The series has been out for a while, so it's hard
Yeah, it's
to
kind of hard to
avoid
avoid some
spoilers,
things.
especially with crazy. It's I don't know. You can compare it, of course, to like One Piece and stuff with all kinds of
Hmm.
moments in there that are hard to avoid spoilers.
But
Everybody
no, I
talks
did
about
not
them.
see it coming.
Yeah, it seemed because they had a guy voice for the cat, and then it was revealed to be her. But I'm sure a lot of
Yeah,
people
they
know
they
what
also
she
made
looks
it
like.
seem like it was just a spirit cat too.
Mm.
Like, and then she made me feel dumb when she was like, "Cats can't speak," and I was like, "Oh, my bad."
That's true. But we see one last little scene there. I think the last episode we see Byakuya. Well, we see Ganju, who is trying to rescue Rukia. They finally get her out of the little cell that they have there. But then Byakuya is there, and we get to see his Shikai scatter. How do you feel about that scatter, Simbon Zakura? What is it? It's something so cool. I love it. But what do you think about his
That was pretty cool. That was pretty cool. It's
Senbon
interesting
Zakura
too
scatter? Senbon
because they
Zakura.
just
That's what it
turned
is.
into like little cherry blossom petals too.
Hmm.
Whereas like you notice everybody's else is they basically stay some type of weapon because we what was his name, Jirobi.
Yeah, yeah. The
We
big
see
brute.
him collapse his and do something similar, but they still looked like weapons. The little flying shurikens.
Hmm.
Byakuya's just wasn't like that at all. Like you could just
Yeah.
easily just not even think about it because you're just like, oh, it's just
Oh
petals
man.
floating in the wind.
I don't know about you, but as much as you could hate Byakuya and how much of a dick he is, I loved it when he fucked Ganju up, dude. That was great. I loved watching that. And I know that makes me a terrible person, but I thought it was cool as shit. He just goes scatter. And then that thing
Oh,
goes
the
and
slice
rips
on
him
the
to
hand
shred.
was crazy.
Oh, dude, that's right. That no wait, what was that
The very
fight?
slow slice.
What was that? Was that really against Ganju? Oh, it was against Ganju. He has that
Yeah.
extremely like speed moment where he just flies past him, kind of like what he did with
Oh, what
Ichigo
was
in
it
season one.
called?
I don't know if they said it, but
They called us because Rukia said, "Oh, this technique is child's play for him,"
yeah, I don't think they
and
said
I
what it
don't
was yet.
remember what the technique was called, but they
Not yet,
definitely
not
did
yet.
mention it.
They mention. I know in the next couple of episodes they'll say the name of that technique. I don't know if they did yet, but he goes flying past him, slices
Hmm.
him, and that slice on the back of his like arm is extremely slow, and it just like opens up. Oh my god, that
Oh
that
yeah,
was
that was
so brutal.
brutal.
It was
That was
so
brutal.
cool. I loved it. I don't know. I don't think I've seen so many like anime shows with like fucking swords, and I feel like I haven't seen anything like that in other shows. Like it just felt so original. It felt great. Um, I can't even think of that being of something like that in Rurouni Kenshin. Like I don't know. I loved it. And then the way Ganju just gets shredded, absolutely just shredded by his attack. I loved it. And it just I don't know about how you feel about Byakuya right now, but I think his power is really cool. And I think he's obviously leading up to be like the main villain right now.
Mhm.
And rightfully so. I think
Yeah,
he's pretty cool. But we
definitely
do,
like what they're doing with them.
yeah. With the last little scene we see, I guess, is just Yorichi kind of shows up and stops Byakuya's scatter from against Ichigo. And she
Yeah.
does this like cool little thing where she like wraps it up or something, and like,
Oh, we saw Ichigo fight Byakuya, and that's when he started doing the movement technique. And then
mm,
Ichigo's like, "I see you," and that's when Rukia was just like, "It doesn't matter if you see him. That technique is like child's play for him. That's an easy technique for him. That's not what you got to
yeah,
worry about."
yeah, I loved it. I think that's I don't know. That was a great way to wrap up season two. It kind of feels like it ended on a cliffhanger.
Yeah,
But
but at
that's
least we got to see the crazy Zenpachi fight, especially at that last moment where you
yeah.
see them both just overflowing and bursting with energy.
Oh,
I
I
think
loved
that
it.
was fine. After that whole exchange, I think it was fine to end it right before something
It gave me
crazy happened
DBZ
with
vibes.
Byakuya.
That kind of gave me
Yeah,
DBZ vibes
that's
almost.
definitely what I was thinking.
I think a lot of people make that comparison with Bleach. They say it's like Dragon Ball Z but with swords. I
I
don't know
mean,
how
it's
much I
kind of
agree with
hard to
that,
say
but
it's explicitly Dragon Ball Z when it comes to energy, because the concept of energy and overflowing energy has
Mhm.
even existed beyond like anime, and that concept is just deep rooted within
Mm.
Eastern culture in general.
I just that's just the term I hear a lot of people
Yeah.
throughout and the shonen. Like if you were trying to tell someone describe, like if you actually this is good. If
I
you were to
definitely
describe
would
Bleach,
not say it was Dragon Ball
yeah,
Z with
what would you
swords.
say to someone? What would you say to someone at this point in time? What would you
If I
describe
had to
Bleach like
compare it
that?
to like a real anime or like a real I say real anime, if I had to compare it to like another anime like that,
A
I would say
real
it's
anime,
closer to
yeah.
Naruto than Dragon Ball, honestly.
Mm-hmm. I definitely
Hmm,
feel the same way because I make a lot of comparisons. I think it's easy to make comparisons to Naruto, and I think it's very right to do that. I'm not saying that Bleach is super similar to Naruto, but I mean they are undeniably part of the big three, just like One
it's
Piece
kind of an
is.
in between, honestly.
Hmm. Although One Piece, Bleach, and Naruto are quite literally and always will be the big three, I would definitely compare Bleach more to Naruto because One Piece has so much more going on with the adventure side, and I don't get
Yeah.
adventure vibes from Bleach. It's pure just action, you know?
Yeah, with One Piece, you have a lot of world building,
Yeah,
and with Bleach, you have that mystery. Like, you don't
that's
really
good. Yeah, that's true.
know what's going on in the world. You don't really know who's powerful and who's not. You don't really even really know how powerful they really are, you know?
Yeah, it gives you a lot of
It's
speculation.
like you're exploring with those with Ichigo's group, you know, of like, okay, well now
Hmm.
we're getting into the Soul Society and we're kind of experiencing it ourselves. Whereas like Naruto, for example, you kind of know that the whole world is out there and there's a bunch of ninja villages. You know what's going on out there, right? It's more
Yeah.
individual conflicts. And same thing with Dragon Ball. You know it's all about defending Earth. You know, you got that. With
Hmm.
One Piece, you know they're sailing on the Grand Line, but you obviously have those that world building that goes on with that. You know, you kind of have that straightforward, yeah, you kind of know what's the extent of the world is. But with Bleach, you go a different route of, well, this is the spirit world, which could theoretically be endless, and you only
Hmm.
know so much even about the Soul Society.
Yeah. There's a lot to learn in the world. If you were to describe season one and describe season two, would they be similar at all? Like, would you think that these are even part of the same series? Because to me,
Hmm.
they feel vastly different.
I would definitely say they seem vastly different because season one sets it up that you think the ultimate enemy is a hollow.
Hmm.
And then season two, you're like, oh, hollows, they're literally nothing. Yeah, that guy that you thought, the Manos Grande, the fisherman, you think they're all set up to be the bad guys, like, oh, this is it. No,
Yeah.
they're literally like bugs.
Yeah.
They're literally bugs to the
Yeah.
Soul Society.
Yeah. I mean, Kenpachi alone. I mean, do we think that these hollows are even a threat to Kenpachi? Like,
The
honestly.
Kenpachi would eat like 15 Manos Grandes in like a second.
What do you think? I mean, Byakuya too, especially. Where do we think Byakuya lies? I mean, Byakuya's. That's an interesting one. Do you think Byakuya versus Kenpachi? How do you think that would fly out?
I think Byakuya would roll Kenpachi.
Yeah, that's an interesting one. I haven't thought about that fight, but I think that would be cool to see. But yeah, I think that's about it for season two. I think so far, I don't know about you, but the series is only getting better and better with each episode. Um,
Exponentially.
I think season one and the beginning of season two started off rough. The beginning of season two here with all of Ganju and stuff, it was pretty boring to me. Like I was even, I mean, I know what happens to Bleach, right? Like I've seen it in Reddit. I've been following it for a long time. Um, but it's still season one, and this little bit of the intro is still probably one of the more weaker parts. But it's not weak as in, oh, it's terrible. This is bad. I can't watch it. It's definitely weak to me. Comparing, I don't know. It's weak. It's like a season one of
Say
most shows.
explicitly the pace is what's the main weakness with it.
Maybe the
If
pace,
season one was
yeah.
a lot
If it was
faster
quicker, it'd be better.
and into the transition into season two, I think it would have been way better.
Yeah, cause like I don't know about you, but I just kind of want to watch season three right now. I don't know how you feel about
Yeah, the
that.
after the Kenpachi fight, like definitely am ready for
Or
season. I
especially
want more
the
Kenpachi.
yeah, Kenpachi's fucking great, dude. Also, we're about to get we left it right on like a little bit of a cliffhanger with
Yeah,
Byakuya
we
and
did.
Ichigo, so it's gonna be really fun. This next season, I'm really excited to kind of get into it. I think this next season is gonna be amazing. I would say this though, I think technically it's all the same arc. You know how like in One Piece it's like, oh, this is Water 7 arc, right? Like this is part.
Hmm.
It's season 2, but technically it's still the same arc, I think. Right? Like I wouldn't, because we're still doing the whole Soul Society arc. I wouldn't separate it, even though I'm
Yeah.
going off the seasons. This is like, I guess the seasons are the one that I'm going off of the wiki. I'm pretty sure this is like DVDs, like oh season 2 DVD, 20 episodes. You know,
Hmm.
so we're just doing it in 20 episode chunks. If anybody out there was wondering, we're just watching 20 episodes at a time because it'd be a lot of work if we were to do one whole arc as a podcast. That would be a lot of work. So we're just going to do 20 episodes at a time. Well, anyways, is there any more closing thoughts or anything you want to talk about Bleach? Anything
Hmm.
you'd like to say that we've learned? Any hopes for the next season?
Well, I'm hoping we see more of like that spiritual kind of concept that we saw with the Genpachi fight. I thought that was really cool. I want to see more of that. I want to see more techniques like the Akuya's techniques with the scatter and the fast foot
All the
technique, whatever it's
Shikais.
called.
Well, yeah, you
Yeah,
have techniques,
and the Shikais
but
too.
the Shikais, because that's what that all is, right? When they transform their sword, that is what Byakuya is doing. That is a Shikai. So that's when they
And
release their sword.
something that I'm interested in that I noticed is when we see Ichigo's sword at first, it looks Cloud-esque, he's got that big sword, the handle and
Hmm.
the hilt. And then when he kind of unlocks it, it turns into what you see, like it doesn't even have like a handle or a hilt. It's just all
It's all
metal
metal,
blade
yeah.
and it's wrapped in a bandage. So you're like, it's obviously more powerful than the previous form, but I think it's telling that it's like, well, it's not developed, like
Mm,
yeah, he's powerful. That's what it wants to show is that he's powerful, but they also want to show that the sword isn't developed. Ichigo isn't developed.
that's
And
true.
that's kind of my takeaway with that.
He is main character status, and main characters, as we know, always grow, don't they? They always grow. So, with that, everybody, I think that wraps up episode 2 of the Bleach Virgin podcast. Thanks all for watching, and we'll see you next time for season 3, episodes 41, which I can only imagine is like 61 or 62 or something like that. So, anyways, thanks guys for watching, and y'all have a good one.